She didn't tell Sumi, didn't go through a manager, didn't even loop in a publicist. Jenny Slatten picked up the phone herself and called TLC's legal team directly. No filter, no heads up, no drama on screen. But behind the scenes, that single call flipped everything. Hey, I'm Oliva and you're watching Reality Sport, where we spill the tea that reality TV tries to hide. Hit that subscribe so you don't miss what they really don't want you to know. And I want your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Jenny's move was betrayal or long overdue? Because here's what makes this twist absolutely wild. We're talking about someone who sold her house, gave up her health insurance, and left her entire world in Palm Springs. For a man who once faked a whole arranged marriage just to keep her out of trouble with his family. Jenny wasn't playing girlfriend. She was going Allen. No prenup, no plan B. Cut to now. Years after being painted as the sweet, slightly clueless older woman blinded by love in a foreign land, Jenny is allegedly drafting legal firewalls to separate herself from the very man she crossed oceans for. And not just him, the franchise that put them on the map. And here's the worst part. Sumit had no idea. According to production insiders, Jenny kept the call quiet on purpose. No warning, not even a hint. She spoke with TLC's lawyers calmly, formally, and laid out what sources say was a seriously detailed legal request. Not a casual complaint, not a pity party, a list. She allegedly demanded that no future content attached to her storyline should get green-lit without her permission or compensation. That includes spin-offs about Sumit's family, cultural conflict arcs, anything that traces back to moments that aired with her face or voice. If he was going solo, she wanted protection, not out of revenge, out of necessity. Because, in her words, passed along by someone close, she felt like everything they sell is built for my life. And now that the empire was growing, she was being cut out of the narrative she helped build. To understand how serious this move is, you need to understand how these shows work. Unlike actors on a set, cast members in reality TV are usually locked into packages, joint deals. The couple is the brand. But Jenny is allegedly pushing for something almost unheard of. Storyline separation. That's like saying break us up in the contracts, too. She's reportedly asking for a solo structure, separate negotiations, and even sharing clauses that tag any pay or visibility based on who drives a scene. A show about Sumit's journey would by nature still carry echoes of Jenny, and she wants payment for that approval rights, maybe even veto power. Why now? Why flip the script so hard, so secretly, and keep the one person affected most completely in the dark? Because the messages she found, allegedly buried in Sumit's phone, made her believe he was already rewriting their future without her. Jenny waited 10 years for this man to marry her. 10 years, not months, not 1 or 2 seasons. A full decade of hiding, waiting, crying in silence, while Sumit bounced between lying to his parents, dodging pressure, and stalling with new excuses, probably the longest engagement in reality television. And through all of that, Jenny stayed. She overstayed tourist visas again and again, flying back and forth when she had no home left in Palm Springs. She left her grandkids, her career, her financial safety net in the U.S. And for what? To be treated like a house guest in the one place she should have felt like a wife. TLC didn't miss a beat. This storyline had everything. Cultural clash, age gap romance, forbidden love, desperate visa drama, yelling aunties, sobbing mothers, temple weddings. It was all gold for the franchise. Jenny was the emotional pull. Viewers saw her as real, raw, and relentlessly loyal. She brought the heart. Sumit brought the chaos. Fair deal, right? Until it turned out maybe it wasn't a deal at all. Because while Jenny was lugging groceries on TH streets of Delhi and defending her love on camera, Sumit was allegedly planting seeds for a solo deal. Not with Jenny. Not for both of them, for him alone. Reports first came in from lower-level crew, then quiet confirmation from a few production insiders. According to them, Sumit had been having direct and casual discussions with certain producers about a digital offshoot, small doc-style content, about his family, his role as a modern Indian son, his journey navigating traditional values and Western marriage. Guess which name allegedly didn't come up in the pitch materials? And Jenny. She only found out when she saw messages popping up on his phone, allegedly not even hidden well. Friendly back and forths between Sumit and a producer tossed in between emails about call times and shoot locations. She allegedly saw screenshots where her name was missing from a storyline about their marriage. Imagine the betrayal watching someone build a business from your life without even mentioning you by name. And here's where it starts getting colder. Sumit allegedly never told her about the idea. Not once. Not even mentioned it as a hypothetical. And if the content idea moved forward, she'd be reduced to flashbacks, a stepping stone. The emotional baggage that built him up? Not the partner moving forward beside him. So Jenny snapped. Not in public, not in fury, but in calculation. And that's when she made the secret call to TLC's legal team, drawing the first reel. Boundary of her entire relationship with Sumit. A move that said, I'm not being used again. Not on camera, not in edit, not in marketing rollouts, not one more second. But what exactly did she see in those messages that made her shift from heartbroken to strategic? And why does it leave producers panicking behind the scenes? She didn't know the conversation was being recorded. It was never supposed to leave the room, or even stay in memory. But somehow that conversation leaked. A raw, messy, off-camera talk that Jenny thought was private. And the worst part, crew members overheard it. Not from Mike Pax, not from a scheduled shoot. It was caught casually, allegedly during a tense moment inside one of their rented living spaces in India. A moment that wasn't meant to be filmed, but now exists as the powder keg behind this entire scramble. Jenny's voice, upset, her words clipped, emotional. According to those who heard snippets, it wasn't about love. It wasn't about loneliness. It was about contracts, story rights, TLC, money control. The whole production mood shifted fast. Smiles went neutral. Producers reportedly stopped making casual jokes between takes. One crew member allegedly flagged it internally the way you'd report a safety hazard. That's when Jenny clocked it. That she had no support system near her. That this contract wasn't a lifeline, it was an exposure. If things went south here, she didn't have health care. She wasn't protected by U.S. labor laws or union support. All she had was Sate. And now even his loyalty was full of question marks. She gave the show years. They gave her an edit. She gave Seam her whole life. He allegedly answered with producer DMs. So Jenny escalated. While productions worried about damage control, Jenny's family was already dialing numbers. Sources say relatives back in the U.S. were already preparing for a legal storm before Sumit even realized one was forming around him. Phone calls were made quietly. Advice was given carefully. And for the first time since stepping into this whirlwind romance, Jenny Slatten wasn't reacting emotionally. She was thinking, strategically. Because what started as a love story that defied distance, culture, and age had slowly transformed into something else entirely. Something contractual. Something financial. Something that, according to insiders, now looked more like a business arrangement than a marriage. Behind closed doors, Jenny reportedly began gathering every document tied to her time on the franchise. Appearance contracts, renewal agreements, international filming clauses, back-end royalty structures. Everything. Not because she wanted to start a war, but because she finally understood how exposed she might be if the narrative moved forward without her. For years, viewers saw Jenny as the emotional anchor of the storyline, the woman who sacrificed everything for love. She sold her home in Palm Springs, walked away from a stable life, left behind family, comfort, and the safety of familiar systems. She moved across the world with nothing but belief in a relationship that had already been tested by lies, secrecy, and one of reality television's most complicated family dynamics. And still, she stayed. Even when the truth about Sumit's previous marriage surfaced. Even when his parents rejected her. Even when visa issues forced her to pack up and leave India repeatedly, only to return again with hope that things would finally settle. Through every tearful scene and every cultural clash, she remained committed, loyal to the relationship, loyal to the narrative, loyal to the idea that love would eventually win. But now, insiders say something inside Jenny shifted. The alleged messages she discovered weren't explosive in tone. They weren't romantic. They weren't even dramatic. That's what made them worse. They were casual, professional, strategic conversations between Sumit and certain production figures discussing possible future content that focused heavily on his individual journey, his identity as a modern Indian husband, his relationship with his parents, his perspective navigating a cross-cultural marriage. And in those conversations, according to sources close to production, Jenny's presence felt optional, not erased completely, but reduced, referenced only as background context, a chapter rather than a partner, a storyline that built his visibility rather than one that would continue alongside him. That realization reportedly hit harder than any argument they'd ever had on camera. Because if the franchise moved forward in that direction, Jenny risked becoming archival footage, flashbacks, emotional context for a narrative that would continue generating attention and revenue without her direct involvement. For someone who had already sacrificed financial security and personal stability to be part of this world, that possibility felt less like creative direction and more like being quietly written out. So she acted. The call to TLC's legal team wasn't emotional. It wasn't impulsive. Insiders describe it as calm, direct, and meticulously prepared. Jenny allegedly outlined concerns about storyline ownership, compensation structures, and approval rights tied to any future content derived from moments she participated in filming. Her position was simple. If future projects used her image, voice, or relationship history to build narrative value, she wanted formal recognition and compensation. If spin-offs or digital projects focused on Sumit's life but relied on their shared story as context, she wanted contractual boundaries in place before anything moved forward. It wasn't about revenge. It was about control. And for producers, that request reportedly sent immediate ripples through internal discussions. Because reality television thrives on blurred lines between personal life and produced content, couples are often packaged together. Their conflicts, reconciliations, and milestones woven into one shared arc that networks can expand into multiple formats. Separating those threads legally is rare, complicated, potentially expensive. If Jenny succeeded in establishing independent negotiation rights tied to her storyline history, it could create precedent, not just for this franchise, but for others. Cast members might begin demanding clearer compensation structures for narrative usage long after relationships end, approval rights for how past footage gets repurposed, financial participation in spin-offs that grow from shared storylines. That possibility alone reportedly had executives paying very close attention. Meanwhile, inside their relationship, tension began building in quieter ways. According to people familiar with the situation, Jenny didn't immediately confront Sumit about what she'd seen. She watched, listened, waited, trying to determine whether those conversations were exploratory ideas or concrete plans already moving forward without her. Sumit, for his part, allegedly continued day-to-day filming and interactions as usual. If he sensed the shift, he didn't address it publicly. And that silence only deepened Jenny's suspicion that bigger decisions might already be happening behind the scenes. The emotional weight of that uncertainty was heavy. After a decade of fighting for their relationship, the idea that she might now have to fight for her place within the very narrative built from that relationship felt almost surreal. But instead of breaking down, she drew lines. Clear ones. No future use of her personal story without compensation. No expansion of shared narrative arcs without approval. No more assumptions that her presence would simply be available whenever production needed emotional depth or backstory. For the first time since stepping into this franchise, Jenny Slatten wasn't just participating in the story. She was negotiating her role in it. And according to insiders, that shift has changed everything behind the scenes. Because now the question isn't just whether Jenny and Sumit can survive another relationship hurdle. It's whether the franchise built around their love story can survive a legal and financial boundary neither of them ever expected to face. And if this really is the moment Jenny decided to protect herself first, then what happens next could reshape not only their future together, but the way reality TV handles the very real lives it turns into entertainment. That possibility alone has quietly turned what once looked like just another relationship rough patch into something far bigger. Something that insiders say could reshape how reality TV couples negotiate power behind the scenes. Because once one person starts drawing legal lines inside a shared storyline, the entire foundation of that storyline begins to shift. And right now, that shift is happening faster than anyone expected. Behind the cameras, production teams are reportedly scrambling to reassess what content can safely move forward and what might now require new approvals. Storyboards that once seemed straightforward suddenly look complicated. Segments that once would have been greenlit instantly are now being reviewed with legal caution. Because if Jenny's request holds weight, then any future project built on the emotional journey viewers already watched unfold could require her involvement, or at the very least, her consent. And consent, for the first time in this long-running saga, is no longer assumed. Sources close to the situation say the atmosphere on set has changed noticeably. Conversations that used to happen openly between producers and cast are now happening in smaller circles. Emails are being worded more carefully. Casual brainstorming sessions about future episodes or digital specials have reportedly slowed down while executives determine how far Jenny intends to take her legal boundaries. What makes this moment especially intense is timing. The franchise is still growing. New spin-offs are always in development. Digital content has become a major part of how networks extend storylines beyond traditional episodes. Short-form updates, behind-the-scenes specials, family-centered features. All of it depends on the ability to build from existing narratives. And Jenny and Sumit's relationship has been one of the most recognizable arcs in the entire franchise. That means any disruption tied to their storyline doesn't just affect them. It affects potential future content, scheduling plans, and even international licensing deals that rely on familiar faces and established emotional connections. For years, Jenny was positioned as the heart of that connection, the outsider who came to India for love, the woman willing to endure cultural rejection and personal sacrifice to make a relationship work. Viewers invested in her resilience. They rooted for her. They followed every twist and setback because her reactions felt real in a way that cut through the usual reality TV dramatics. And that authenticity translated into value. Emotional value for viewers, narrative value for producers, financial value for the network. Now she's asking to be treated accordingly. Insiders say Jenny's approach isn't aggressive, but it is firm. She reportedly isn't trying to shut down production or prevent Sumit from pursuing his own opportunities. What she wants, according to sources, is recognition that their shared history has measurable worth, that any expansion built from that history should include her voice in how it's used and how it's monetized. From a business perspective, it's a logical stance. From a relationship perspective, it introduces a level of tension neither of them has faced before. Because once legal language enters a personal relationship, even indirectly, everything changes. Sumit, according to several crew members, appeared unaware of the depth of Jenny's concerns until very recently. If he had been exploring solo content opportunities as casually as sources suggest, he may not have realized how those conversations could be perceived. In reality television, cast members often discuss future ideas with producers informally. Sometimes those ideas develop. Sometimes they don't. But when one partner begins those discussions without the other, it can create an imbalance that's hard to ignore, especially when the relationship itself is the foundation of the entire brand. Jenny's alleged discovery of those conversations seems to have been the turning point. Not because the idea of solo content is inherently wrong, but because of how it was handled. Or rather, how it wasn't handled. The absence of communication reportedly mattered more than the content of the messages themselves. It created the impression that decisions about their shared narrative might already be happening without her involvement. After everything she had already given up to be part of that narrative, that realization felt like a line had been crossed. So instead of confronting the situation emotionally on camera, she chose a quieter path, a strategic one. She gathered information. She spoke to people she trusted. She evaluated her options. And then she made that now infamous call to TLC's legal department, setting in motion a chain of events that insiders say no one fully anticipated. What happens next remains uncertain. If negotiations move forward smoothly, Jenny and the network could reach an agreement that allows both her and Sumit to pursue individual opportunities while still respecting the shared history that brought them into the spotlight. That outcome would likely keep the franchise stable while establishing clearer boundaries for future projects. But if discussions become more complicated, the ripple effects could extend much further. Production timelines might shift. Planned content could be delayed. Storylines might need to be restructured to avoid potential conflicts over rights and compensation. Even on-screen interactions between Jenny and Sumit could take on new layers of tension as off-screen negotiations continue. And viewers, as always, will only see a fraction of what's really happening. Because the most significant drama rarely unfolds in front of the cameras. It happens in phone calls, in emails, in private conversations where decisions about narrative control and financial participation are made long before any footage reaches the editing room. Right now, Jenny Slatten appears to be navigating that hidden side of reality television with a level of caution and determination few expected from the woman once portrayed as simply following her heart across the world. Whether this move ultimately protects her position or complicates her relationship even further is a question that hasn't been answered yet. But one thing is clear. The story that began as a cross-cultural romance has evolved into something far more complex. A negotiation not just of love and loyalty, but of ownership, identity, and the value of a life lived on camera for millions to watch. And if insiders are right, the next phase of this saga won't just determine what happens between Jenny and Sumit. It will determine who truly controls the narrative they built together and who gets to profit from it moving forward. The deeper the situation goes, the more insiders are starting to realize that this is no longer just a relationship issue between two reality stars. It's turning into a power shift inside one of the most talked about storylines in the franchise. Because once legal boundaries enter a reality TV narrative, everything from filming schedules to future contracts begins to feel uncertain. And right now, uncertainty is exactly what's surrounding Jenny and Sumit behind the scenes. Production sources say tension isn't exploding loudly on set. It's quieter than that, more controlled, more careful. Conversations between crew members have reportedly become shorter and more formal whenever either Jenny or Sumit is nearby. Even small production decisions now go through additional approvals, something that almost never happened before with this couple. For years, their storyline ran on emotion and spontaneity. Producers captured whatever unfolded naturally between them. Now every interaction carries a layer of caution because no one wants to trigger a situation that could later turn into a legal complication. Jenny, according to insiders, has become more observant than ever. She isn't reacting impulsively. She's watching patterns. Who talks to Sumit privately? Which producers approach him with ideas? How often her name comes up in planning conversations? It's not paranoia, sources say. It's awareness. After feeling like she might have been slowly written out of future plans, she wants full clarity on where she stands before allowing anything else to unfold without boundaries. And that shift in her mindset is what's making this entire situation feel so different from every previous conflict they've faced. In the past, when Jenny and Sumit argued, it was emotional. Family pressure, cultural differences, marriage delays, visa stress. All of it played out in ways viewers could understand. But this is strategic, quiet, calculated. It's not about whether they love each other. It's about whether their shared story is being managed fairly. And insiders say that question is now hanging over every filming day like a cloud no one can ignore. Meanwhile, Sumit reportedly finds himself in a position he never expected. For most of their time in the spotlight, he was portrayed as the one trying to balance love and family expectations. The man caught between two worlds. But now the balance has shifted. Because if Jenny moves forward with independent contractual control over her narrative, Sumit may have to renegotiate his own position within the franchise as well. Joint deals that once treated them as a single storyline unit could be forced to split into separate agreements. Separate negotiations mean separate expectations. Separate expectations can lead to separate creative directions. And separate creative directions can quietly pull a couple apart even if they remain together in real life. That possibility has producers watching very carefully. not because they want conflict, but because they understand how delicate long-running reality storylines can be. When viewers invest years into a relationship arc, any sudden structural change behind the scenes risks breaking the illusion of continuity that keeps audiences emotionally connected. Jenny's request for storyline separation threatens that illusion in ways no one predicted. If future episodes or spin-offs must legally distinguish between her narrative and Sumit's, the seamless storytelling that made their journey so compelling could become harder to maintain. Editors might need to reconsider how past footage is used. Writers and segment producers might need to rethink how future scenes are structured. Even promotional materials could require new approvals depending on how prominently Jenny's past appearances are referenced. It's a level of complexity most viewers will never see, but it's exactly the kind of complexity that keeps network executives awake at night. Because once one cast member successfully asserts narrative ownership, others might follow. And if that happens, the entire economics of reality TV storytelling could begin to change. For Jenny, though, this isn't about industry precedent. It's personal. After 10 years of emotional investment, public scrutiny, and financial sacrifice, she reportedly feels she has earned the right to control how her story continues or doesn't continue. She doesn't want to wake up months from now and see a new digital series or spin-off built from moments she lived through without her involvement. She doesn't want to become a background reference in a narrative that once revolved around her life choices. Most of all, she doesn't want to feel replaceable inside a story she helped make valuable. And that feeling, according to sources close to her, is what finally pushed her from patience into action. For a long time, Jenny believed loyalty would naturally protect her place in the narrative, that if she stayed committed to the relationship and cooperative with production, everything else would fall into place. But loyalty doesn't always translate into long-term security in the world of unscripted television. Contracts do. Permissions do. Legal clarity does. That realization may have come late, but insiders say it has come with absolute clarity. Now every move she makes is measured, every conversation intentional, every appearance on camera filtered through the understanding that what is filmed today could be repurposed tomorrow in ways she can't control unless she sets boundaries now. And that mindset is quietly transforming how this entire story unfolds from here. Because the woman once portrayed as simply following love across continents is now showing a different side. One that understands leverage. One that recognizes value. One that isn't afraid to step outside the emotional narrative and treat her reality TV presence like the business asset it has become. Whether that shift ultimately strengthens her position or creates even deeper distance between her and Sumit remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. The next chapter of the saga won't just be about romance or family acceptance. It will be about control. Control over story. Control over image. Control over who benefits from a decade of televised love, conflict, and sacrifice. And behind the cameras, everyone involved knows that once control becomes the central issue, nothing about this relationship or this franchise will ever look quite the same again.